Pokemon cards are getting ridiculously expensive, but what if I told you that there are still amazing cards you can buy for under 15 bucks? That's why in this video, I'll be looking at the 10 Pokemon cards that are currently under 15 USD. And to start this list at number 10, this goes to the Steelix from Mega Evolution's new base set. Now this card is so cool, and Steelix is an insanely popular Pokemon, though given its price point, I think this one's an awesome collectible to add to any collection. You need to remember, right? Generation 2 has massive nostalgia pull power, okay? I know a lot of people talk about Generation 1 Pokemon, but when it comes to Generation 2, it also has its own legacy. So many people started Pokemon with Generation 2, and what's really interesting about Gen 2 is when Gen 1 came out, a lot of people were like, okay, what's Pokemon's next move? And then, as soon as all the Generation 2 Pokemon came out, people really became fans of them again, and it became such a strong selling point. And Steelix is an evolution from a Gen 1 Pokemon as well. Though, irrespective of all that, it's such a cool classic Pokemon. And honestly, we should be getting a Steelix Special Illustration Rare eventually. And I think we will get a Mega Steelix Special Illustration Rare, or hopefully within these Mega Evolution sets. But I can't help but feel that this is an awesome card for the price point. Now, moving on to number 9, it is the Brute Bonnet from Paradox Rift. I mean, what an insane artwork. Though you need to remember, right, that this card had a huge spike in price at one point, though this was really pulled back because, it isn't the most hardest card to pull from Paradox Rift. Now, Brute Bonnet is illustrated by Komiya, and Komiya has so many incredible artworks, and, a real unique kind of psychedelic design comes across with their artworks. And, it's not just the Brute Bonnet, but you've also got the Drowsy, you've got the Arctibax, the Frigibax, the Baxcalibur, such amazing artwork. And there's a lot of collectors who love collecting Komiya's artworks, though you got to remember, right, with this Brute Bonnet, it is still an illustration rare, and we have had a bit of an illustration rare boom that happened, earlier in 2025. Right now, they've calmed down a little bit, but with how Pokemon cards are going, and the fact that we've had a bit of like a illustration rare overload, especially with Black Bolt and White Flare, maybe some of these cards won't be getting huge price points, but when it's under 15 USD, I think this is an awesome card to add to any collection. Now, moving on to number 8, it is Ethan's Ho-Oh Ultra Rare from Destined Rivals. Now, Destined Rivals has had a few cards become super popular, though the reality is they are all getting quite expensive, and this one's at a great price. One of the issues with Destined Rivals is the amount of kind of expensive cards that have really come out with that. Now, one of the things, right, is especially now in the hobby, is people just think, oh, it's special illustration rare, or it's an illustration rare, or it's nothing. People really only want those top rarities, and we've kind of been spoiled over the last few years because, the days of just getting a cool hyper rare rainbow card and, people get excited about that, that's not really a thing anymore. Now people want the awesome illustrations. People really want those, really unique artworks that come about. Even sometimes getting these ultra rares, I think they're amazing cards to add to your collection because they are a little bit of a forgotten kind of card now because, like I said, we've been so spoiled with all these SIRs and illustration rares. But, Ho-Oh being such a classic Pokemon, I think, for under 15 USD, it's a great card to add to your collection. Now, moving on to number 7, it is Okidogi Illustration Rare from Shrouded Fable. Honestly, this is one of my favorite artworks, and it's a bit of a hidden gem in the market. See, it's really funny, right? Because Shrouded Fable came out, and, when it came out, everyone was just like, what is this set? No one liked it. It was really poorly received. And this was coming at a weird time because the last specialty set that was like in the same kind of time period as Shrouded Fable for 2023 was Pokemon 151. So everyone was expecting, when 2024 comes around, the set, what we're going to get is going to be so amazing. But, Shrouded Fable did leave a lot of people disappointed. Now, because of that, no one really gave Shrouded Fable a chance. But when you look at the illustration rares in this set, dude, they are so good. Sure, the special illustration rares are a letdown. I'm not going to argue with anyone there. But in terms of the illustration rares, like this Okidogi is just one of the examples of how awesome they are. And considering that they're still at a pretty good price point, I think it's an amazing card to add to your collection. Now, moving on to number 6, it is the Tangela from Pokemon 151. Honestly, to get such a well-priced illustration rare from Pokemon 151 is a rare sight, though the artwork is cool as well, and nearly all 151 illustration rares are in demand. And honestly, this is one of the more affordable 151 illustration rares out there. Now, it's actually interesting, because when you look at the cards that got illustration rares within Pokemon 151, you do have some interesting choices. And the Tangela is one of them, and the Machoke as well. But, considering that it is under $15, I don't think anyone's going to be complaining by adding this to their collections. And, I know that Pokemon 151 recently has had so much, popularity around it. People are really loving the set. And because of that, all the illustration rares in the set have experienced, some weird price fluctuations over the last year. I think, the special illustration rares of Pokemon 151 are so in demand. And then when you look at all the other cards, you got to remember one thing about Pokemon 151 is so many people collect master sets. So because of that, nearly every card in this set is so highly desired by a lot of people. So, for under $15, it's an awesome card to add to your collection. Now, all the cards I've mentioned in this video are awesome, though if you do buy cards like this, it's just as important to track them over the long term. And that's why I'm proud to have partnered with Collector to bring you this sponsored video. Now, Collector is one of the best apps for tracking your collection's value over time, as it updates your collection's worth in real time. And as a fun fact, every card I've shown in this video was researched using Collector, showing you it's not just a price tracker, it's also a powerful research tool. For example, within Collector, there's a set analytics section. This gives you deep insights into any set's performance, and it also shows you the top market movers within a particular set. Now, if you are a Collector Pro member, you actually get the ability to scan your cards using your phone's camera. Now, this is a huge time saver, along with being able to access the Max tab, which extends cards pricing past the usual 1-year view. And a huge thank you to Collector for sponsoring today's video and always supporting the channel. You can find all the details of the Collector app within the video's description. Now let's get back into this video. Now moving on to number 5, it is the Fidough illustration rare from Scarlet and Violet base. Now real talk, man, for a base set, Scarlet and Violet literally is punching above its weight. When you look at other base sets, pretty much anything other than like Generation 1's original base set, every base set has been, somewhat a little bit lackluster, right? I mean, when you look at Sword and Shield base set, that is, but I mean, when you look at the card and the set list, it looks like a bit of a boring set. When you look at Scarlet and Violet base, that is not the case whatsoever. Everyone looks at the illustration rares and they can't believe how awesome they are. But this Fidough is an amazing artwork. And I actually remember when Scarlet and Violet base kind of got released, and I remember seeing this artwork and I just kind of took a step back and I said, wow, these illustration rares, they really do tell a story. Look how incredible this artwork is. And of course, even now, a few years later, I mean, it's soon going to be 3 years. We're approaching 3 years old for Scarlet and Violet base. And we see an artwork like this, I just think it's an amazing card to kind of like keep as a piece of history as, early illustration rares, or the first set that released illustration rares. Because, how long are illustration rares going to be around for? Because, some people say, oh, the new Mega Evolution set, it's not a base set, it's, it's a continuation of like this new era. But really, when you think about it, illustration rares and special illustration rares have carried on into the Mega Evolution era. Are they going to carry on into Gen 10, or is Gen 10 going to have its own unique thing? I mean, alternate arts never really carried on after Sword and Shield, so I'm interested to see, are illustration rares and SIRs going to continue? Because if not, this set and this card in particular are those early illustration rares. Though in spot number 4, it is the Shuckle illustration rare from the latest Mega Evolution set. Now, honestly, this artwork is just so awesome, and Shuckle is just one of those super loved Pokemon that, everyone kind of loves. No matter when you kind of started your Pokemon collecting journey, or, if you played Pokemon games, everyone just loves how quirky Shuckle is. I mean, just as a side note, if you've seen Shuckle's stat distribution, it is literally just like everything else is low, and it's just like, look, defense, special defense, let's max that to, like take it to the 9s, dude. That's what it's like with Shuckle. Now, but honestly, I really think the artwork is super cool. And when you see cards like this and when they're under $15, they are awesome ones just to add to a collection, keep in a binder. And of course, because it's such a loved Pokemon, no one's really going to be complaining about having this in your collection. And I think if you pull this card, you'll just be equally as excited. Now, moving on to spot number 3, it is the Drampa illustration rare from Temporal Forces. Honestly, with the new Mega Drampa, this card just became a little bit more lovable. I mean, Drampa is one of those really unique Pokemon, especially its typing, right? Because it's a dragon and normal dual type, which is just really bizarre. And now the fact that we've got Mega Drampa, I think this illustration rare just looks more cool for some reason, because what it's capable of, you know what I mean? And in my opinion, the Mega Drampa is one of the cooler new Mega Evolutions. But in all honesty, I do think, considering the fact that Temporal Forces is a little bit of an older set, and the fact that it does have very difficult pull rates, this is an awesome card to add to your collection. Now, moving on to number 2, it is the Luminion V V from Crown Zenith. Now, honestly, this artwork is just so amazing, and it's one of the most similar artworks to the Magikarp illustration rare. You know, when I look at this artwork, I always thought when Crown Zenith came out that this was going to be a very expensive card. And you know, the fact that it's still under $15 is pretty cool because, you know, it is an amazing artwork. I mean, when you look at Magikarp and you see the price points of that, sure, Magikarp is just way more popular than Lumineon, but I don't think this artwork is bad in any way, shape, or form. And I think, in fact, it's one of the cooler Galarian Gallery cards from Crown Zenith. It's going to be interesting to see how kind of Crown Zenith gets perceived in a few years because, you know, in retrospect, Crown Zenith's one of the most beloved sets from the Sword and Shield era, and what's going to happen, you know, when we move on to Gen 10 or, you know, Gen 11, are people still going to look back at Crown Zenith cards and just say, wow, how incredible they all are? Because right now it does have very positive reception. Now, moving on to number 1, it is the Great Tusk EX from Scarlet and Violet base. When we look at Scarlet and Violet base, like I was saying, when you look at some of the special illustration rares, they're also really just such amazing artworks. I feel like if this Great Tusk came out later on in the generations, it would be a bit more expensive, but because it's such an early card, and you know, a lot of collectors were kind of already just conditioned to this card's quality, as the generation went on, no one really looked back at this card, but to me, it is such a cool artwork, the design. I mean, I remember seeing this card in person, I just thought, wow, it really does stand out. So for that reason, I think it's an amazing card to add to your collection, and like I said, right, Scarlet and Violet base is one of those unique sets, and it is like doing so well as a base set. And even though base sets never have crazy kind of performance, like you're never going to see, and no one's favorite set other than Generation 1, like since base sets have come out, they've never been anyone's favorite set. And also, I do think Scarlet and Violet base was probably the second best base set we've ever had in any generation, considering how good the quality of the artworks are. Now, making this list was a blast, and if you're curious to see 8 Pokemon cards which are undervalued, I do reveal that in this video here. Within this video, I go over the 8 Pokemon cards which are currently super well priced in the market. Appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the video on screen, and I'll see you on the next video.